YouTube. Today we're going to talk about comic books. More specifically, we're going to talk about the best comic book for you to read to start yourself off on the right foot so that you can really dive into this medium. Now, I'm going to bury the lead really quickly. I'm going to let you know Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. Hands down, that's the best starter comic book. Now, don't go away too quick because I'm also going to tell you the criteria that I use to define this as the best comic book, and I'm going to tell you the best volume. It's 6 volumes. I'm going to tell you the best volume for you to read so that you don't have to read throughout the full story to get an understanding for what the story is about and if this is for you. And then I'm going to read through the first chapter with you so you get a better understanding of what you're getting into before you go and spend that money on it. All right. Now let's talk about these criteria. Now, number one criteria when you're recommending anything to anybody is that it's consistently high quality. Everyone wants to hear, hey, read The Avengers, but make sure you get it by this author, because if it's by a different author, the tone is entirely different, the plot line's entirely different, right? It should be easy for them to get into, and it should be easy for them to read from start to finish. Number two is that it subverts their expectations, right? You're brand new to comics, or maybe your friend is brand new to comics, and maybe they're not into comics right now because it didn't seem like it appealed to them, right? So you need to subvert their expectations for what they think a comic book is. Now, Saga of the Swamp Thing is definitely going to subvert your expectations. Number three is that it's self-contained and that no context is needed. Nobody wants to hear, hey, you should read this comic book run, but there's backstory, there's context for who they are and why they're acting the way they are, the way they're acting to other characters. Number four is that it makes you want to read more of the story. Number five is expansion. Now, the great thing about this story, and specifically this volume, but this story in general, is that it also features other characters. This one features Constantine pretty prominently. This one features Batman prominently, right? So maybe I want to look into some of the Batman stories. All right, we're going to start off here with volume 4. And we'll just start with the cover art for the first chapter. That's what we're going to be talking about today. You don't need any context, but I think it's good to know the context here. You'll see here it says sophisticated suspense. Now, the reason why they had to add that in was because at this time, this is 1983, I think, in 1984, something like that, won the award in 1984 at least. At the time, all the comics were being controlled by what's called the Comics Authority, which is basically censorship for comic books. They wanted to save the children from drugs and, bad messages or whatever. And the Saga of Swamp Thing is one of the first comic books that actually bucked that trend and said, listen, I'm going to make comic books that adults can also enjoy, multi-layered stuff. Kids could enjoy it, but the Saga of Swamp Thing is a very graphic book. Anyway, starting off here, we're introduced to our main character for this volume, whose name is Wallace. The main character for the book is obviously Swamp Thing. Again, you don't need to know any context to start in with book 4 because, as I'm going to mention, they integrate it into the story so that you don't need to know anything. Obviously, it will help you, but anyway, he is a creature of the earth, so it pretty much stands to reason that he bears fruit. This hippie guy finds the fruit in the swamp and takes it home with him. And you can see here with this art here, he takes it home and he tries to analyze it, right? He's trying to figure out what the hell is this thing. He can't figure it out. And his friend comes to his door and talks about how the friend's wife is in the hospital with cancer. She probably has 1 or 2 days left, and he's looking to our hippie friend for, recreational, medicinal purposes, right? He's a hippie. They kind of have those things. But as he mentions here, he's on a 10-day brown rice cleanse, so he doesn't really have anything. He does mention this fruit that he found in the swamp. He doesn't know what it is, but it does have some, chemically speaking, he's looking, he's analyzing it. He says it has similarities to the datura root, so it might have some psychoactive properties. So he gives it to his friend and sends him on his way. After he sends this to his friend, he has 2 pieces left. That's important to note. Once his friend leaves the door, another guy shows up. His name is Milo. You can see from the fact that Milo just trashes the place that he's a douchebag. Milo basically forces him to give it to him for free. I mean, he says, I'll pay you $15, but then he's like, oh, I don't really have it on me at the moment, so tough shit, I'm taking it anyway. Anyway,
So our main character only has one piece left, and he's not going to eat it right now because he wants to continue to study it to figure out what it is. Then we flash to the friend of our main character, and he gives the fruit to his wife, and you can immediately see that the fruit is doing something to her, but we don't know what it is yet. Then we flash back to Milo the D-bag, and it starts kicking in, man, and he is on fire. Now, what's important about this and what's important about this is that these both set the pace for what came before. So by eating the fruit of the Swamp Thing, you are connected to the Swamp Thing in a metaphysical way. And your connection depends on your spirit, on your personality, on your aura, on your positivity level, or what have you. So Milo's a D-bag, and so he experiences the trauma of becoming the Swamp Thing, which, if you didn't read the earlier chapters, he got caught in a fire. There is a reason for it, but just read the chapter. And he, was reincarnated as this plant object. Now, Milo is experiencing the death aspect of it. The girlfriend, the dying girlfriend, is experiencing the life aspect of it. So she's seeing, life in a totally different way. She's seeing how interconnected everyone is. He's seeing roots forming and growing out of him, and bugs eating each other, and death and mayhem. And she is seeing, she says a note here about, icicles, snowflakes, they're all unique. They each have their own beautiful shape, and when they melt, it's gone forever. That's where I am now. I've got my own shape, and I like it, and I don't want to lose it, but icicles are frightened of the sun. There's no need for all this fear. And again, Alan Moore's writing is just above and beyond just beautiful. Like, this could be written today, and it would be a banger. Anyway, he's seeing, the body mutilation of himself. He's seeing body mutilation of other people turning to demons. She is, loving everything about life. They're outside. They start to hug, and they start to hug. At this point, we start to get more backstory on this guy Milo and why he's having this experience. Again, like I said, he is a D-bag, if that wasn't clear with the artwork. But he's running out into the street, and then our girlfriend over here, she has no fear of death, and they have one final kiss. And again, the artwork and the writing just makes this more than just a comic book, right? This is a story. It makes you feel things, like the change in that color there. It's masterful. Anyway, our friend Milo is running out in the middle of the street on drugs, and when you know it, he gets hit by a car and he dies. Now, the next thing that happens is our main character is visited by his friend, who tells him how amazing that drug was and how it changed his life to be able to spend those last moments happily with his wife. And so our friend's like, maybe I should try this thing. It sounds great. And then on the next page, and I'm going to take a second here to stop and just talk about how he manages to turn all of these into one-pagers, right? Negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. This is a friend of Milo's who was at the bar and witnessed the breakdown. He says, hey, you sold him that junk, and it really fucked him up, and you pretty much killed him. But then, of course, do you have any more? So our main character here is kind of torn. He understands that this is a powerful thing that he's working with here, and he understands that the character of your being is going to influence what sort of experience you have with it. And there's something I want to call back to on the first page that I actually didn't mention. But in the beginning, when he's narrating the story, he's talking about how he was actually in the swamp to look for Swamp Thing, because he's like the Bigfoot of the town. No one really has a picture of him, but there's footsteps that don't match up with any known creature. So he's there looking, and he's like, that's always how it is with monster stories. It remains largely a question of faith. That's one of the first lines in the chapter. And in the last chapter, he's talking about how, he's a good person. He said some mean things to his ex as they were breaking up, and he's always regretted that. But he's never done anything terrible to people. He believes that he's a good person, and he just ends it off. The last line of the chapter is, it's all a question of faith. That's all. So he picks it up. He goes to bite it. The look of shock on his face as he realizes he just doesn't have that faith in himself. Another small detail here as far as the artwork is concerned, he's sitting down and the light's obviously coming from this angle, but you have a shadow coming up from this angle, and it's the shadow of the Swamp Thing. It doesn't even match up with his posture. That's intentionally done. This is a very intentional book. Everything about this book is done in a way to maximize the emotional impacts of it.
All I have for you today. Again, this was Stillwell, which is the first chapter of Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 4 by Alan Moore, specifically Book 4. There are other versions, other ways that this saga is collected. There's the Absolute, there's chapters, there's digital. But one thing that I haven't gotten to, I've shown you the first chapter, but the rest of the chapters create its own consistent story in and of itself. Just with Book 4, you do not need to read 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. This is it has a build-up, it has a climax, it has a resolution, all in and of itself. So that's what makes it really amazing to me by itself. Now, this copy is $20 retail. If you go online to a number of different places, I'm not going to shout anyone out unless they sponsor me, but you can find these for up to 50% off online sometimes. So give it a shot and let me know what you think.